Before the world collapsed into darkness, before the giants roamed the earth and the heavens trembled beneath the weight of rebellion, there lived a single man whose quiet faith changed the course of history. His name appears only in passing in the ancient scriptures, little more than a whisper on a fading page. But behind that whisper lies a story so extraordinary that heaven itself opened to receive him. While the world slid toward chaos, Enoch chose another path, one that would lead him into the very presence of the Almighty. Long before the floodwaters rose, long before humanity's cries reached the throne of heaven, the world existed in a fragile balance. The memory of Eden still lingered like the scent of a garden carried by a distant breeze, and the echo of God's footsteps could still be heard by those who dared to listen. But even in that early age, shadows were lengthening. The children of the first generations drifted toward violence, pride, and forgetfulness. And yet, in the midst of that rising darkness, one man walked in the light. His name was Enoch. If you were to search the ancient writings, you would find his name mentioned only briefly. A few lines, a handful of words. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. For many, this single sentence raises more questions than it answers. What does it mean to walk with God? Why was he taken? And why him, out of all the souls who lived in those early days? To understand Enoch, you must picture a world still young. The ground was rich, untouched by millennia of toil. Rivers flowed with clarity, trees rose tall, their leaves shimmering with the memory of Eden's perfection. And humanity, though already drifting from its purpose, still lived long, slow lives filled with time to ponder, to work, to choose who they wished to become. Enoch was born into the line of Seth, the son given to Adam and Eve after the death of Abel. Seth's descendants carried a fragile remnant of devotion, a quiet longing for the Creator who once walked openly among them. In that lineage, reverence was not yet forgotten. Songs were still sung, prayers were still whispered, and though the world was shifting toward chaos, a flicker of faith remained. From childhood, Enoch was different. While other boys chased each other across the fields, laughing and tussling beneath the sun, Enoch would wander to the hilltops alone. He would lie on his back and watch the sky stretch wide above him. He studied the stars long before he understood their names. Drawn to their silent order, he listened for the whisper of something beyond the earth, something eternal. People noticed. They whispered that the boy was strange, that he lived too much in his thoughts. Yet even those who did not understand him could not deny that there was a quiet peace around him, an aura that seemed untouched by the noise and pride that plagued the world. When Enoch came of age, he married, raised a family, and worked the land as others did. But, unlike others, he built his days upon rhythm and devotion. At dawn, he stood on the hilltops. At dusk, he offered thanks. His hands were calloused by labor, but his heart remained tender toward the Creator. He did not merely believe in God, he sought him, and God noticed. Scripture tells us that Enoch walked with God for over 3 centuries, but this simple phrase fails to capture the intimacy of that relationship. Enoch's walk with God was not a metaphor, it was a companionship, a friendship forged through trust, obedience, and unbroken devotion. The world around him grew restless, violent, and corrupt, yet Enoch remained steady, a living echo of Eden's lost purity. It was in those days that humanity began to fracture. The descendants of Cain built cities fueled by ambition. They crafted idols and carved monuments to their own greatness. Their voices rose in songs of self-worship, drowning out the reverence their ancestors once held. Violence spread like wildfire across the land. Families turned against one another. The strong devoured the weak. And the earth, once a canvas of peace, trembled beneath the weight of growing sin. Enoch saw it all, and it broke his heart. He prayed not only for his own family, but for the world. He interceded for strangers. He cried out for mercy over a people who no longer remembered their Maker. His prayers rose like incense, soft but constant, carried on the wind to the throne of heaven. And then, one day, something changed. It began with a voice not audible to human ears, but unmistakable in the soul. Enoch felt the presence before he understood the message, a warmth, a weight, a holiness so profound that his knees buckled beneath him. He pressed his face to the ground, trembling. "Enoch," the voice said. His heart froze. Then it burned. He lifted his eyes. Though he saw nothing but light, light that pulsed with life, light that knew him. "Here I am," he whispered. "You have walked faithfully." The voice said, "Rise, for I have chosen you. You will witness what no mortal has seen. You will record what no one else has known. You will speak for generations not yet born, and your words will endure until the end of days." Enoch could not breathe. He wanted to protest he was only a man, fragile and flawed, but the presence that enveloped him was not asking, it was appointing. From that moment, Enoch's life was no longer his own. Visions began to unfold before him like scrolls unrolling in the wind. He saw realms beyond the sky, heard voices that shook the soul, glimpsed battles between light and darkness. Angels visited him, not in dreams, but in waking reality. They taught him mysteries of creation, the nature of heaven, and the secrets of divine order. Yet even as he learned wonders no human had known, his heart remained humble. Enoch did not seek power. He did not boast of what he saw. His task was not to elevate himself, but to warn, to teach, to preserve truth in a world drowning in lies. Days turned into years, years into generations, and through it all, Enoch walked with God, not as one who follows from a distance, but as one invited into the inner chamber of divine purpose. It was during those centuries that the world's corruption grew beyond anything Enoch had imagined. The Watchers descended, the giants were born, violence spread until the cries of the earth reached the throne itself, and Enoch, who had seen the coming disaster, warned his people. Some listened for a moment, most did not, but God listened to Enoch. His devotion did not shield the world from judgment, but it carved a path of hope through the coming darkness. His writings became a lifeline, a record of why the flood must come and what lay beyond it. His scrolls would survive through Noah, through generations, across continents, until they re-emerged in distant lands long after empires rose and fell. And through all this, Enoch continued to walk. He grew older in years, but not in spirit. His hair silvered, his beard grew long, but his eyes still held the spark of the boy who once watched the stars in wonder. His family grew. He lived to see children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And each generation felt the peace that surrounded him. They knew he was different. They sensed heaven in his presence. And then came the day, a morning like any other. The sun rose over the hills. Enoch prayed, as he always had. But that morning, when he stood upon the familiar path, something felt different, as if the very air shimmered with anticipation. He walked further than usual, up the ridge where the wind whispered through the grass. And there, as he lifted his eyes to the sky, the world shifted. Light descended, not the harsh blaze of fire, but the soft, powerful radiance of home. Enoch felt his heart swell. He knew, behind him, his family called his name. They searched the hills, their voices echoing. But Enoch did not turn back. The light enveloped him, lifting him from the earth. His body did not grow weak. His breath did not fade. He did not collapse into dust. He ascended, alive, whole, carried upward by the one he had walked beside for 3 centuries, and he was not found. No grave, no bones, no final words etched in stone. Only his writings remained testimonies of visions too vast for the world he left behind, warnings for future generations, and the legacy of a man who chose faith over fear, devotion over distraction. Enoch walked with God, and God took him. The story of the world was about to plunge into chaos. Angels would fall, giants would rise, humanity would face judgment. But before that storm came, a quiet man from the line of Seth left behind a map, a spiritual compass pointing the way through. Darkness. Enoch's journey did not end with his ascension. It began there, for his voice echoes still across the ages, calling every generation to choose what he chose, to walk with God when the world walks away. Before the floodwaters rose and before the giants ruled the valleys, a single moment of desire reshaped heaven and earth. High upon a mist-covered mountain, 200 angels made a forbidden oath, an oath that would shatter the boundary between the divine and the mortal. They were the Watchers, sworn to guard humanity. But on that night, beneath ancient stars, they chose another path, and the world would never be the same. Long before the age of catastrophe, before humanity drowned in its own corruption, heaven had entrusted the earth to a special order of beings. They were called the Watchers' Angels, tasked not with ruling mankind, but with observing, guiding, and protecting from afar. They stood upon mountain peaks, hidden within clouds, their presence unseen yet ever watchful. For generations their vigilance held firm, but even angels are shaped by what they behold. The Watchers were created from light, woven from obedience and purpose. Yet as they watched humanity grow, watched families laugh, watched children born, watched beauty unfold in its fragile imperfection, something began to stir within them, a longing not meant for angels, a desire not granted to those who dwell in eternal purity. And among them, one stood apart, Samyaza. He was not the first in rank, but he was the strongest in influence. His voice carried weight among the 200. His judgment had been trusted across ages, yet even he was not immune to the pull of temptation. It began quietly, almost innocently, like a whisper carried on the wind. A subtle thought. What would it be like to walk the earth as humans do? What would it be like to love as they love? The more Samyaza watched, the more the thought grew. The daughters of men moved with grace and vulnerability. Their laughter was music, their tears a stirring mystery. And the Watchers, bound by heaven to observe but never to touch, felt a longing that slowly became unbearable. One twilight hour, when the sun dipped beyond the horizon and the sky blazed with colors no mortal could describe, Samyaza spoke aloud the question that had haunted him. "I desire a wife among the daughters of men." The words echoed across the mountain peak. At first, silence answered him. The other Watchers stared, stunned not by the thought itself, but by the boldness of speaking it aloud. For every one of them had felt the same tug of desire, though none had dared to voice it. It was Azael who stepped forward next, an angel of sharp mind and restless spirit. "I feel it too," he admitted. His voice trembled with both shame and relief. "We have watched too long from the heights. Our hearts yearn for what we may not have." One by one, voices rose in agreement. Some spoke softly, as if in confession, others spoke with boldness. But the truth became clear. Nearly all 200 Watchers desired the same forbidden union, and that truth held danger. Samyaza understood what the others did not yet see. Desire was only the beginning. Once they crossed the boundary between heaven and earth, there would be no turning back. The consequences would be unimaginable. Judgment would be certain. So he spoke again, his voice steady but heavy with dread. "If I alone descend, I alone will bear the full punishment of God." But if we descend together, if we share in this oath, then we will share the burden of the consequences. Azazel's eyes narrowed. Are you proposing that we bind ourselves to a vow? Yes, Samyaza said, a vow that none may break. The other watchers hesitated. They were torn between fear and desire, between duty and longing. But the longing won. And so, under a sky thick with stars, the watchers descended to a mountain in the region that would one day be called Hermon. The mountain was ancient, its stones older than any human language. Clouds clung to its slopes, winds whispered through its cliffs. It was a place where heaven seemed to touch the earth, a fitting place for an oath that would divide the two forever. The watchers gathered in a vast circle upon a plateau. Samyaza stood at the center. He raised his hand, and the wind grew still. Not a leaf moved, not a star flickered. We bind ourselves, he declared, by mutual curses. The angels repeated the words, their voices trembling. We pledge that we will not turn back from this plan. Again they repeated, we will descend to the earth. Their voices strengthened. We will take wives from among the daughters of men. A hush fell. And whatever comes, we will face it together. The final oath sealed their fate. At the moment the words left their lips, something shifted in the fabric of creation. The mountain trembled as if in mourning. The stars above dimmed, their light shrinking from what had just been spoken. Even the wind seemed to recoil. For the first time since the dawn of their existence, the watchers had broken the sacred boundary placed by God. Hermon would forever be known as the Mountain of the Oath, the Mountain of the Curse. Then came the fall. The angels who had once stood in the courts of heaven, radiant and pure, now descended in forms that shimmered like falling stars. They crossed through layers of light and shadow, losing pieces of their glory with every breath of mortal air they inhaled. When their feet touched the earth, the transformation was complete. They were no longer entirely divine. They were no longer bound entirely to heaven. They had become something in between. At first, humanity did not fear them. The daughters of men saw beings of impossible beauty approaching from the hills, strong and graceful, with eyes that held the glow of the heavens. Compared to mortal men, they were giants of stature and presence, and the women did not resist. How could they? These were beings whose voices carried the echo of creation. Their beauty was overwhelming, their attention intoxicating. The daughters of men welcomed them with open hearts. Thus began the unions that heaven had forbidden. The watchers built homes, they taught their wives the ways of the heavens. They fathered children who were unlike any the world had ever known. Mortal women gave birth to sons who grew with unnatural speed, towering above men before they reached the age when children should still play. These offspring became the Nephilim, giants of impossible strength and insatiable hunger. But the consequences did not stop there. Though the watchers took wives, their hearts did not find the peace they imagined. Desire had led them to earth. But desire could not shield them from guilt. Samyaza himself watched the chaos unfold and whispered, "What have we done?" His words were swallowed by the wind. Not all the watchers felt remorse. Azazel, for one, reveled in his newfound freedom. He began teaching humanity knowledge that had been forbidden since the creation of the world. He revealed secrets of metallurgy, showing men how to forge weapons of war. He taught women how to adorn themselves with makeup and jewelry, transforming beauty into a tool of lust and manipulation. He delighted in watching the world twist under the weight of this newfound power. Others followed his example, teaching sorcery, enchantments, astrology, and divination. To them, this was liberation. To heaven, it was corruption. While the watchers played gods among mortals, humanity struggled beneath the weight of their influence. The Nephilim consumed everything in their path. Crops vanished, herds disappeared, villages were trampled and torn apart. The giants devoured not only food, but men, women, and children. The world trembled. Fields were soaked in blood. Rivers carried the screams of the dying, and the watchers, who had once been guardians, now watched helplessly as devastation spread across the land. Some wept, some turned away, some denied responsibility, but none could undo what they had set in motion, and in the heavens above, the faithful angels watched. They recorded every act, every cry, every broken oath. Their reports ascended before the throne of the Almighty. The time of patience was ending. The judge of all creation would soon act, but judgment did not fall immediately. Heaven waited, as the watchers taught forbidden arts, as the giants ravaged the earth, as humanity fell deeper into darkness, waiting for what no one knew. Perhaps heaven waited for a single moment of repentance. Perhaps heaven waited for a cry for help, strong enough to shake the foundation of the world. Whatever the reason, heaven watched as the consequences unfolded. Meanwhile, on Mount Hermon, the place where the oath was sworn, the stones still whispered with the memory of the night when angels chose desire over obedience. And each night, as shadows stretched across the land, the spirits of the mountain murmured their warning. Boundaries exist for a reason, because when the sacred is broken, the world breaks with it. The watchers did not know yet that their fall had been witnessed, that the faithful angels had carried word to the throne, that the Almighty had already begun preparing judgment. All they knew was that they had crossed the line and there was no return. The earth trembled beneath their choices. Humanity cried out under the weight of the giants, and heaven prepared to answer. Soon, 4 archangels would descend. Soon, the mountains would shake. Soon, the watchers would learn that every oath has a price. But for now, the world lived unaware that the greatest rebellion in its history had begun on a silent mountain beneath a canopy of stars. On the night when heavenly beings broke their vow and bound themselves to a curse that would reshape all creation, the fall of the watchers was only the beginning. What came next would plunge the world into a darkness deeper than any it had ever known. They were not meant to exist. Born of heaven and earth, born of desire and rebellion, the Nephilim entered the world like storms in human form. They grew too fast, hungered too deeply, and shattered every boundary set by creation. What began as a forbidden union soon twisted into a monstrous age where giants walked the earth and humanity trembled beneath their shadows. This is the chapter in which the world learned fear. The world, after the descent of the Watchers, did not change all at once. At first, it shifted slowly, like a shadow creeping across the earth at dusk. Humanity welcomed the strange visitors who had come down from the mountains with their radiant forms and voices that carried the echo of eternity. The daughters of men saw beauty beyond human measure, and the sons of men saw power beyond their comprehension. To them, the Watchers were not fallen beings, they were gods, but creation itself knew differently. When the first children of the Watchers were born, the world felt the impact like a stone thrown into still water. These children grew at a rate no mortal could understand. A newborn that fit in its mother's arms would, within a few seasons, stand taller than a grown man. Their limbs stretched long before their voices deepened. Their strength multiplied long before they learned restraint. They were magnificent and terrifying wonders to behold, disasters waiting to unfold. The mothers who bore them suffered greatly. Some did not survive the birth. Others lived long enough to watch their sons outgrow them within a few short years. And the fathers, the Watchers, looked on with a mix of pride and dread, for what they had brought into the world could not be contained. These children were called the Nephilim, giants, titans, the mighty ones of old, names that would echo long after their bones turned to dust. At first, they played like children do. They chased animals through the fields. They wrestled with each other in games that shook the ground beneath their feet. They laughed loudly and loved fiercely. They were wild, but they were still innocent. Yet innocence does not last in a world already cracking under the weight of sin. As the Nephilim grew, so did their hunger. They ate more than entire families could harvest. Herds of livestock disappeared in a matter of days. Barns emptied, granaries drained. At first, people tried to accommodate them. After all, these were the sons of angels who dared deny them anything. But the hunger of the Nephilim was not natural. It grew faster than the earth could replenish. When the animals were gone, the giants turned to other sources. They uprooted fruit trees. They stripped entire fields. They raided villages, and when the food was still not enough, when their bellies ached and their tempers grew sharp, they turned their appetites toward humanity itself. The first attacks were scattered, a shepherd missing, a traveler found slain with massive footprints around the body. At first, people blamed wild beasts, but as the attacks multiplied, fear spread like a contagion. Families abandoned farmland and fled into caves. Small communities sought protection beneath the walls of newly built settlements. Men armed themselves with weapons, some forged through the forbidden teachings of the Watchers, but no blade forged by mortal hands could pierce the skin of a Nephilim. The giants grew bold. They fought among themselves for sport, shaking valleys with their clashes. Mountainsides cracked beneath their feet. Rivers ran red with the aftermath of their violence. They crushed homes simply by walking across them. They roared like thunder, and their laughter echoed like storms rolling across an empty plain. Yet not all their destruction came from hunger or violence. Some came from curiosity, the dangerous curiosity of beings with the strength of 10 men and the wisdom of none. A Nephilim child might lift a boulder simply to see what lay beneath it. Never noticing that a house stood in its shadow, another might stamp its feet in irritation and trigger a landslide. Their games became catastrophes, their tantrums became earthquakes, and the Watchers, their fathers, watched helplessly, for they had created beings stronger than themselves, creatures shaped by the mixing of heaven and earth, but not governed by the order of either. The Watchers had given their children power but had not given them purpose. And without purpose, even the greatest strength becomes ruin. Humanity cried out. Families begged the Watchers for restraint, for mercy, for protection. Some begged them to take their children and leave. Others cursed them openly for bringing such destruction. But the Watchers were trapped by their own choices. They loved their children, yet they feared them. They wanted to guide them, yet they knew nothing of how to raise creatures born outside the laws of creation. And deep down, they understood a painful truth. They had unleashed something the world was never designed to bear. As the giants multiplied, the very fabric of the earth began to fail. The soil thinned from the constant harvesting. Forests were drained, rivers clogged with debris, animals fled from regions where the Nephilim roamed, seeking refuge far from the chaos. Entire cities collapsed under the weight of their presence. Those who survived scattered across the land. Some fled into mountains, some sailed across seas, some attempted to form alliances with the Watchers, hoping the angels might intervene. But the angels had lost their authority the moment they broke their oath. The world trembled not only under the footsteps of giants, but under the moral darkness spreading from the teachings of the Watchers. The forbidden knowledge had taken root. Weapons were forged that could pierce stone. Enchantments whispered through marketplaces. Diviners claimed to read the stars with new clarity. Warfare evolved beyond anything the early generations had imagined. The earth, once a place of simplicity, now groaned under the weight of corruption. Yet even amidst the chaos, there were still moments of beauty, deceptive moments that hid the gathering storm. A giant child might sit at the edge of a river, dipping its fingers into the water, fascinated by the ripples. A watcher might sing to his wife in a voice that held remnants of heaven. A village might celebrate a harvest spared from the giant's hunger, but these moments were like candlelight in a hurricane, flickering, fragile, doomed. The giants soon discovered their own power. With each passing year, their arrogance grew. They began to see themselves as rulers, destined to dominate the world. They built massive dwellings on hilltops, carved their names into stone, erected monuments to their own greatness. Some Nephilim demanded tribute. Villages were forced to supply food, livestock, and even human lives to appease them. Others used men as playthings, making them fight to the death for amusement. Blood and fear became the currency of the land. Humanity reached its breaking point. Whispers spread of rebellion. Small groups banded together, hoping to fight back. They armed themselves with weapons, as Zael had taught them, to forge blades of metal that glinted in the sun. But when they faced the giants, their courage melted into despair. The Nephilim crushed entire armies with a single blow. Resistance turned into desperation. Desperation turned into hopelessness. Hopelessness turned into prayer. The cries of humanity rose like smoke to the heavens, and heaven, silent until now, listened. The faithful angels watched from above. They saw the devastation, they saw the bloodshed, they saw the watchers playing gods while their children ravaged the world. And with grief that shook the foundations of heaven, they carried the report before the throne. But while heaven prepared its response, the earth continued to fall apart. One of the darkest signs came when the giants began to war among themselves. Their hunger, their pride, and their insatiable desire for dominance turned brother against brother, tribe against tribe. Their battles were cataclysmic. Mountains trembled, valleys split open. The ground cracked beneath the force of their blows. What humanity could not destroy, the giants would destroy themselves. Their war marked the beginning of the end. Yet even in their violence, there remained an eerie nobility, a twisted echo of the divine nature buried somewhere deep within them. In their roars, one might hear the memory of heaven. In their eyes, one might glimpse sadness, confusion, or longing for something they could never truly understand. They were monsters, yes, but they were also victims, caught between two worlds, belonging to neither. And as the world spiraled toward destruction, the Watchers began to fear not only for mankind, but for themselves. They knew heaven would not remain silent forever. They felt judgment stirring on the horizon, like distant thunder. Samyaza gathered the Watchers. His once resolute leadership had crumbled under the weight of regret. Lines of anguish marked his face. His once radiant form had dimmed. "We have done what cannot be undone," he said. "Our children have broken the world, and heaven will come for us." Some Watchers wept. Some cursed their own choices. Some still defended their actions, blinded by pride. Azael stood apart, his eyes sharp with defiance. "We gave humanity gifts," he argued. "We taught them power. We showed them how to rise. You showed them how to fall," Samyaza replied. Their voices clashed like lightning and thunder, but argument could not change fate. Repentance could not turn back time. Love could not save what had already been doomed. The world groaned under the weight of sin, and the Nephilim, those towering children of rebellion, continued their rampage, unaware that their days were numbered. For even now, high above the earth, 4 archangels awaited their command. And soon, the judgment of heaven would descend like a storm, unlike any the world had ever seen. But that moment had not yet come. For now, the giants ruled. For now, terror walked the earth. For now, the world belonged to the Nephilim. What happened next would reshape creation itself. The rise of the Nephilim was complete. What followed would be their fall. The world was already trembling under the weight of the giants, but a deeper darkness was yet to come. It did not roar like the Nephilim or thunder across mountains. It whispered, it shimmered, it seduced. When the Watchers broke their oath, they brought more than children of chaos. They brought knowledge meant only for heaven. And once humanity tasted it, Corruption spread like fire through dry grass. This is the chapter where the world forgot innocence. The giants had shattered the earth with their footsteps, but the Watchers shattered it with their teachings. While the Nephilim ravaged fields and devoured entire villages, the Watchers began to offer mortals something far more dangerous than brute force knowledge, unfit for human hands. They were angels who once stood in the courts of the Almighty, beings who understood the structure of creation, the secrets of the stars, the hidden laws that shaped the universe. Knowledge was part of their being, woven into the light from which they were formed. But knowledge in the wrong hands becomes a weapon. It began quietly. Azael, restless and resentful, was the first to share what heaven had forbidden. He walked among the camps of men, observing their simple tools, their stone-tipped spears, their lack of skill in shaping the world around them, and he saw an opportunity not to help humanity, but to justify his rebellion. If men are to survive, he said, they must be strong. He approached a group of shepherds who lived at the edge of a valley scarred by the tracks of giants. They trembled when he appeared. Angels, even fallen ones, still carried an aura that pressed on the soul like the weight of a mountain. Azael extended his hand. "I can show you how to forge metal," he said. "I can teach you how to shape fire and stone into blades strong enough to cut through anything." Fear warred with curiosity in the shepherd's eyes, but Azael smiled a smile. Too perfect, too radiant, too inhuman, they agreed. From that moment, the world changed. He taught men how to mine ore from the earth. He showed them how to shape copper and iron, how to grind the edges into blades that gleamed like captured sunlight, how to hammer metal into weapons that could pierce the hide of beasts and the flesh of men. When the first sword was lifted into the air, the angels watching from above shuddered. Heaven knew what was coming long before men did, for with the birth of the sword came the birth of organized violence. Tribes that had once fought with stones and wooden clubs now wielded shimmering weapons. Bloodshed, once limited by the weakness of human strength, now flowed freely. Azael watched, satisfied. He did not see the destruction. He saw liberation. Other watchers followed his example. Amaros taught men the art of enchantments, chants, and rituals that manipulated unseen forces. What began as whispered prayers soon twisted into spells seeking control, domination, and contact with spirits that lurked in the shadows of the unseen world. Barakel revealed the secrets of the stars. He taught astrology how to read omens, how to track celestial cycles, how to chart the heavens in ways that turned the sky into a tool of divination instead of wonder. People began to trust the stars more than the creator who hung them there. Kokabel taught signs of the constellations, Penemu taught writing and the craft of ink, but he also taught manipulation of words, the art of twisting truth into lies and lies into truth. Kazdeja taught poison, its creation, its uses, its deadliness. The world, once simple and innocent, now bristled with knowledge it was never meant to hold. But the corruption did not stop with the men. The women changed too. It was Azael again who taught them the secret arts of adornment. He introduced powders that colored the cheeks, minerals that shimmered on the eyelids, oils that made hair glow under the sun. He showed them how to alter their appearance, how to captivate, how to seduce. At first, it seemed harmless, simple beauty, an innocent enhancement. But beauty became vanity. Vanity became obsession. Obsession became deceit. Men fought over women decorated with Azael's teachings. Jealousy rose like smoke from every village. Husbands murdered husbands. Lovers betrayed each other. And women, once valued for their spirit, became objects in the eyes of men hungry for possession. It was not the cosmetics themselves that doomed them, it was the vanity they awakened, the envy they sparked, the lust they inflamed. Humanity had tasted forbidden fruit. not from a tree this time, but from the hands of angels. And the world groaned. The faithful angels who watched from heaven were horrified. They saw not only the acts of corruption, but the ripple effect that spread outward from Darv. Every piece of forbidden knowledge, what the Watchers taught humanity, could not be unlearned. A sword forged could not be unforged. A spell spoken could not be unspoken. A seed of vanity, once planted, grew wild and uncontrollable. Humanity, once content, now wanted more. More power, more beauty, more control, more knowledge. And the earth, already weakened by the giants, began to fracture under the weight of this new hunger. Villages once bound by cooperation became divided by ambition. Tribes went to war for resources, claiming territory to forge weapons or acquire minerals. Scholars rose who claimed to speak for the heavens. Though their words were tainted by the teachings of fallen angels, temples were built for the Watchers. Though the Watchers never asked for worship, mortals carved statues in their likeness, massive figures with wings outstretched, eyes lifted toward the sky. Offerings were placed at their feet, songs were sung in their honor, and though the Watchers knew this worship was blasphemous, they did nothing to stop it. Pride, once a small spark, now roared into flame. The Watchers, who had once stood humbled before the throne of God, now accepted honors meant only for the divine. They walked among their temples like kings. They allowed themselves to be revered as gods. Some even encouraged it, feeding off humanity's devotion, masking their guilt beneath the illusion of glory. But the glory was hollow. Inside, they were afraid. They feared what their teachings had unleashed. They feared the giants' growing violence. They feared the inevitable judgment from heaven. Every time thunder rolled across the sky, they wondered if it was the beginning of their end. And still, they continued teaching. For corruption, once released, becomes its own momentum. The worst of it came not from weapons or adornments, but from knowledge that twisted humanity's soul. The Watchers taught the secrets of the heavens, knowledge meant to inspire awe, now used for manipulation. They taught spells that bent spiritual forces. They taught rituals that invited darker beings into the mortal world. Demons' spirits, birthed from the violence of the Nephilim, found passage into the hearts of men who sought power beyond their own limitations. And with every ritual, with every incantation, the boundary between the natural and the supernatural weakened. Heaven watched in sorrow. The faithful angels cried out to God, "The earth is dying. Humanity is enslaved by corruption. The giants devour the world. The Watchers lead your creation into ruin." And God, slow to anger but perfect in judgment, prepared his response. But judgment had not yet come. On earth, humanity continued to spiral downward. Empires rose, primitive yet ambitious, driven by the strength of the giants and the knowledge of the Watchers. They built massive structures, towers that reached toward the sky. They carved symbols into stone, mixing heavenly wisdom with earthly arrogance. The giants acted as rulers, enforcing their will through sheer terror. They demanded offerings of food and livestock. When the food ran out, they demanded humans. Villages disappeared in a single night as entire populations were taken to feed the Nephilim. And through it all, the Watchers watched in silence. Some were tormented by guilt. They tried to restrain their sons. They begged the giants to show mercy. But the giants did not listen. They were creatures of strength without wisdom, hunger without limit. Other Watchers embraced the chaos. They saw the world reshaped in their image and felt a twisted pride. They whispered to their mortal followers, feeding their ambitions, encouraging them to seek greater and darker power. Humanity was no longer simply corrupt. It was transformed. The earth, once a place of life, now groaned beneath death and sorrow. The skies darkened with smoke from burning villages. Rivers ran red. Forests fell to ashes beneath the feet of warring giants. Even the animals fled from regions touched by corruption. Enoch, who walked with God, saw all of this. He prayed with tears in his eyes. He saw men lost to vanity, women seduced by forbidden arts, children taught weapons before they learned wisdom. He saw giants tearing the world apart. He saw the watchers turning their backs on their purpose, and he knew judgment was coming. But before judgment, there would be revelation, for the Almighty would soon send 4 archangels to confront the fallen ones, to bind the corrupting forces, to cleanse the earth. But that moment had not yet arrived. For now, the world sank deeper into the darkness born from forbidden knowledge. A darkness not loud or violent like the giants, but subtle, seductive, and complete. Weapons can break bones. Giants can shatter mountains. But knowledge, false, forbidden, destructive knowledge can break the soul. This was the corruption that spread across the world. This was the poison that seeped into every tribe and every family. This was the slow unraveling of creation. The Watchers had fallen, the Nephilim had risen, and humanity, caught between them, was losing itself. Soon, heaven would answer. Soon, divine justice would fall. But for now, the world continued to drown in a knowledge it was never meant to hold. The forbidden had become familiar. The sacred had been profaned, and the earth braced itself for the storm that was coming. The world had reached its breaking point. The giants devoured everything. The Watchers corrupted everyone, and humanity, crushed between the two, cried out for deliverance. Their voices rose from valleys soaked in blood, from mountains stripped bare, from rivers running dark, and heaven heard those cries. In this chapter, the fate of the world is weighed in the courts of eternity, and 4 mighty archangels are sent to decide the future of creation. The earth could bear no more. Every sunrise brought new destruction. Every sunset echoed with mourning. The land, once fertile and peaceful, now groaned beneath the weight of the Nephilim's rampage and the spreading corruption of the Watchers. Humanity, who should have flourished under the open sky, huddled in fear like animals awaiting slaughter. Villages lay in ruins. Forests were stripped bare. Rivers clogged with broken bodies, drifted towards seas that no longer teemed with life. The world was dying, and the dying world cried out. Its cry was not a single sound, but a tapestry of agony. It was the weeping of mothers whose children had been taken by giants. It was the anger of fathers who could not defend their families with the weapons they forged. It was the despair of survivors hiding in caves, praying to a god they feared had abandoned them. It was the groan of mountains cracked by giant fists. It was the whisper of trees falling under the weight of war. It was the silent scream of innocence lost. All of creation lifted its voice to heaven, and heaven listened. High above the earth, beyond clouds and starlight, beyond the layers of the heavens Enoch had once walked through, stood the throne of the Almighty, radiant beyond imagination, terrible in its holiness, unmovable in its justice. Around the throne stood countless angels, watching the unfolding of history with grief in their eyes. Among them stood 4 archangels, guardians of creation, warriors of divine order, beings who had served since the dawn of time. Michael, commander of heavenly armies. Gabriel, herald of divine messages. Raphael, healer and restorer. Uriel, keeper of prophecy and judgment. These 4 had watched as the giants spread across the land like an unstoppable plague. They had watched the Watchers teach the forbidden arts. They had watched humanity slip further and further from its purpose, and though they longed to intervene, they could not act until the Almighty commanded it. That command was approaching. The cries of the earth grew louder, sharper, more desperate. They rose like smoke in the wind, passing through the layers of heaven until they reached the highest court. No cry of suffering ever went unheard there. At last, the time came. In the great hall where the foundations of creation had been laid, where the stars had been named and the seas commanded, the Almighty gathered his archangels. The hall shook with his voice, not with anger alone, but with sorrow. For even the judge grieves before delivering judgment. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. The voice thundered. The earth cries out to me. The blood of the innocent testifies against the watchers and their offspring. The corruption has spread to every corner of creation. The time of patience is fulfilled. The time of judgment has come. The archangels bowed. Uriel stepped forward first, his eyes burning like coals of truth. Lord of hosts, he said, the hearts of humankind are torn. The giants devour them. The watchers deceive them. Yet among them remain those who still seek your way. What shall be done for the righteous? A remnant will be preserved, the Almighty replied. One man has found favor in my sight. His name is Noah. You, Uriel, will go to him, reveal to him the coming destruction, teach him how to survive the cleansing that must come upon the earth. Uriel bowed again, his wings folding in solemn understanding. For prophecy, once spoken, cannot be unspoken. Raphael stepped forward next. He was the healer, yet even he knew some wounds could not be mended with balm. Most High, Raphael said, the corruption of Azael is deep. He has taught humanity weapons and deceptions. His influence has poisoned tribes and nations. What is your command concerning him? The Almighty's voice rolled like a storm across eternity. Bind Azael hand and foot, cast him into the darkness beneath the desert of Dudael, cover him with jagged stones, let him remain there until the day of final judgment. Raphael nodded. No hesitation, no fear, only obedience. Gabriel stepped forward, his presence gentle but resolute. Lord, he said, the Nephilim rage without restraint. They consume the world. Their strength is unmatched among mortals. How shall they be stopped? Set them against one another, God answered. Let them fall by their own violence. Let their pride and hunger be their destruction. You, Gabriel, will turn their hearts toward battle. Their war will prepare the world for the cleansing flood. Gabriel bowed, though a shadow of sadness passed over his face. To set destruction upon the earth grieved him. Yet he knew the alternative was far worse. At last, Michael stepped forward, tall as a mountain, fierce as dawn's first fire. He was heaven's champion, the angel who had cast down Lucifer himself. Most High, Michael said, what is your will for the watchers who broke the oath? The Almighty's voice grew solemn. They have corrupted humanity, defied their purpose, and led creation into ruin. Bind them beneath the hills where they descended. Imprison them in the deep abysses of the earth. For 70 generations, they shall watch the destruction of their children and the cleansing of the world. Their judgment is sealed. Michael's wings spread, shining with holy flame. He bowed deeply. Your will shall be done. The decrees were set. The mission was clear. Judgment was coming. But before the archangels descended, heaven fell silent. Silent out of reverence, silent out of grief, silent out of awe at the magnitude of what was about to unfold. For the flood would not only sweep away corruption, it would reshape history forever. Uriel departed first. He descended through the layers of heaven, through clouds heavy with sorrow, until he reached the humble dwelling of Noah. Noah was tending his fields. When the air shifted, the wind grew still. Light surrounded him, and he heard the voice of Uriel. Noah, righteous man, the world will be cleansed. The flood waters will come. Build an ark according to the pattern I will show you. Gather your family. Prepare for the judgment of God. Noah fell trembling to the ground, but he obeyed. As Uriel instructed the righteous, Raphael descended into the desolate desert of Dudael, a place of cracked stone and burning. Winds, There he found Azael standing tall among the rocks, his once radiant form darkened by pride and rebellion. "Azael," Raphael declared, "you have corrupted the earth. You have betrayed heaven. By the order of the Most High, you are bound." Azael roared in defiance, but he could not resist the archangel. Heavenly chains wrapped around him, chains woven from light itself. Unbreakable and eternal, Raphael cast him into a pit carved by the hand of God and covered him with stones sharper than swords. Azael's voice echoed through the desert for days, then fell silent forever. Meanwhile, Gabriel descended into the territories of the giants. He walked unseen among them, whispering thoughts into their minds, thoughts of envy, suspicion, rage. The Nephilim, already prone to violence, quickly turned their fury toward each other. Their battles shook the earth. Hills split, valleys opened, the skies burned with dust. What humanity could never defeat, the giants would destroy with their own hands. And then came Michael. He descended not gently, but with the force of a meteor. Falling from the heavens, the watchers saw him before he reached the mountain. They knew what his coming meant. Fear, something they had not felt since their descent, returned to their hearts. Samyaza stood at the front, his face etched with regret. "Michael," he said, "have we no hope?" Michael's gaze was firm but sorrowful. "You were warned. You were created for purpose, not pleasure. You were entrusted with earth, and you betrayed that trust." He raised his hand, and chains of burning light shot forth. The watchers cried out, but none escaped. One by one, they were bound. One by one, they were cast beneath the very mountain where they swore their oath. The earth opened, swallowing them into darkness. Rocks sealed the pit like a tomb. Their cries faded into silence, and so the decisions of heaven were carried out. Azael was bound. The giants turned upon themselves. The watchers were imprisoned. The righteous were warned. The world was being prepared for cleansing. But before the floodwaters came, the earth released one final cry, a cry not of suffering, but of hope. For the first time in generations, humanity looked not to the giants, not to the watchers, not to forbidden knowledge, but to heaven. Heaven had answered. Judgment was coming, but so was salvation. The storm had already begun to gather on the horizon. Before the flood cleansed the world, heaven delivered its judgment on the angels who broke the sacred barrier. The giants had begun tearing each other apart. Azael was imprisoned beneath burning stones, and Noah had received his warning. But the watchers, the beings who started it all, had yet to face their fate. This is the chapter where Michael descends like a living tempest, and the fallen angels learn that even heavenly beings are not beyond the reach of divine justice. The sky grew heavy in the days after Gabriel set the giants against themselves. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, not yet the ones that would become the great flood, but signs of a different kind of reckoning. Winds circled the earth in strange patterns, as though creation itself braced for what was coming. Animals grew restless. Birds abandoned their nests and flew in tangled swarms. Even the giants paused their battles at times, sensing a shift in the order of things. But it was the watchers who felt it most. They felt it in their bones, in the fading remnants of their heavenly essence. They felt it in the ground beneath their feet, as if the earth itself prepared to swallow them. They felt it in the silence between thunderclaps, a silence that carried the icy whisper of judgment. Samyaza, once their leader, stood on the slope of Mount Hermon, the mountain where their rebellion began. He looked down upon the valleys where the giants raged and devoured, where forbidden knowledge spread like wildfire, where humanity cried out in terror. His heart ached with regret, but regret could not undo rebellion. Behind him, the other watchers gathered. Their once radiant forms had grown dim, their wings no longer shimmering as they had in the days of innocence. They were angels still, but broken ones. Their descent into flesh had stained them, and their choices had chained them. Azael was already gone, bound by Raphael, in the desert of Dudael. The others had heard his screams echoing across the spiritual realms, watched the sky tremble with every cry of fury and despair. If Azael could fall, none of them was safe. Samyaza lifted his gaze to the heavens. "He is coming," he whispered. The watchers turned their eyes upward. The sky began to split, not in a violent crack, but in a widening seam of pure light. It was not sunlight. It was not lightning. It was the radiance of heaven, the brilliance of holiness, the steady fire of justice descending upon a world drowning in corruption. And within that light was Michael. He did not fall like a meteor. He descended with deliberate, terrifying grace, wings unfolding like burning banners across the sky. Each feather shone with a fire that did not consume but purified. His armor glowed like molten gold. His face held both sorrow and unbreakable resolve. When he landed on the mountain, the earth bowed beneath his feet. None of the watchers dared speak, their voices caught in their throats. Their power, once so formidable, shrank before Michael like candlelight before the sun. Michael regarded them with eyes that saw not just their forms, but their souls. "Samyaza," he said, his voice deep as the roots of creation. "You led your brothers into rebellion." Samyaza lowered his head. "We did wrong," he said softly. "Our desire blinded us. Our love became corruption." "It is not my place to weigh your motives," Michael replied. "Only your deeds, and the earth cries out because of them." One of the watchers stepped forward, trembling. "Michael, have mercy. We meant no harm to humanity." A shadow of sorrow passed over Michael's expression. "You were meant to guide from afar, not to rule. You were meant to observe, not to deceive. You were meant to guard, not to violate. Your intentions do not erase the suffering you caused." Another watcher, Amoros, pleaded, "Let us return to heaven. Let us repent there." Michael's voice softened, but remained firm. "Repentance does not erase consequence. Heaven is a place of purity. You have touched corruption, and corruption clings to you." Samyaza stepped between his brethren and Michael. "If judgment must come, let it fall on me alone. I led them, I persuaded them. Their guilt is mine." Michael shook his head. "Your leadership holds weight, but each one chose rebellion freely. The Almighty's decree stands. The watchers are to be bound in the valleys beneath this mountain, where their oath was sworn." The moment he spoke, the wind roared, clouds spiraled, the ground trembled with the weight of divine authority. Some of the watchers cried out, some fell to their knees, others tried to flee, but no one escapes Michael. With a gesture, chains of heavenly fire streaked across the sky. They did not burn like mortal flames. They glowed with the essence of judgment itself. The chains wrapped around the fleeing watchers with the speed of lightning, binding their wrists, ankles, and wings. Their cries echoed through the mountains. Samyaza did not run. He lifted his chin and spread his arms, surrendering to the chains that found him without force. One by one, the watchers were bound. One by one, they fell to their knees. One by one, they felt the full weight of their rebellion. Michael raised his hand, and the earth beneath them split open. A chasm yawned wide, deep as night, carved by the command of the Almighty. A blast of dry, sulphurous wind rose from the depths, as though the very underworld exhaled. "Into the abyss," Michael commanded. Two watchers tried to resist, digging their fingers into the earth, but the chains dragged them forward. They tumbled into the chasm, their screams swallowed by darkness. Others followed, some struggling, some sobbing, some silent with acceptance. Samyaza approached the edge last. He looked back at the world one final time, at the mountains, the rivers, the sky he once flew through in freedom. He looked at Michael. "Tell the Almighty, I am sorry." Michael bowed his head. "Your words are heard, but your repentance does not remove the consequences. rest in the knowledge that justice and mercy can coexist. Then Samyaza stepped into the abyss with a thunderous crack. The earth sealed itself, the mountain trembled, dust rose in spirals, and the cries of the watchers faded into the depths of the world, growing distant until silence replaced them. The fallen angels were bound. Their rebellion was ended. Their fate was sealed for 70 generations. But Michael was not finished. He took flight, ascending into the sky with blazing wings. From above, he looked upon the world ravaged by the giants and the corruption of the watchers. What he saw broke even an archangel's heart. Valleys soaked in blood, villages burned to ashes, the giants battling among themselves, tearing the earth apart, humanity cowering in fear. The world needed cleansing. It needed a rebirth. And the Almighty had already decreed how that cleansing would come. Michael flew across the heavens, ensuring that every watcher was bound, that none escaped, that the lines between heaven and earth were restored. His presence alone caused the giants to falter, sensing a greater power than their own. Some tried to attack him, but their mighty blows passed through him as though striking wind. He was not there to fight them. Gabriel's influence would finish them soon enough. Far below, Noah continued building the ark. Uriel had visited him again, delivering detailed instructions, its length, its width, its height, all written in words, not numbers. So even an AI voice could speak them without corruption. Noah obeyed faithfully. His neighbors mocked him. His friends called him mad. But Noah knew what they did not. Judgment was not coming. It was already here. As Michael ascended into the higher realms, he spoke to the Almighty, not with words, but with the language of obedience. "It is done." And the Almighty replied, "The earth will be cleansed, but a remnant will survive. Through Noah, humanity will begin anew." The archangels took their stations. Raphael watched over the desert where Azazel lay buried. Gabriel hovered above the battlefields where the giants tore one another apart. Uriel guided Noah with prophecy and wisdom. Michael patrolled the boundary between heaven and earth, ensuring that no fallen power could rise again. The world had entered the final stage before the flood. Silence settled upon Mount Hermon. The silence of deeds completed, the silence before a storm that would erase an entire age. Under the earth, the watchers would wait bound in chains of fire, listening to the distant echoes of their children's destruction, and knowing they had brought it upon themselves. The sky darkened, clouds thickened, winds grew colder, animals migrated in unnatural patterns. Noah worked by torchlight. Humanity felt something approaching, something vast, unstoppable, divine. And in the courts of heaven, the Almighty looked upon creation with both sorrow and resolve, for judgment must come when mercy has been exhausted. But even in judgment, mercy remains. And that mercy lived in one man, hammering wood in the fading light of a dying world. The watchers were bound. Their chapter was closed. A new chapter, one of water, destruction, and rebirth, was about to begin. Before the flood, before angels were bound, before giants fell by their own hands, one man was invited into the mysteries of creation. Enoch did not ascend in death. He was taken alive, carried into realms no mortal eye had ever seen. In this chapter, heaven opens its gates, and Enoch walks among fire, light, judgment, and glory. What he witnessed would shape prophecy, history, and the destiny of all generations to come. Long before the first raindrop of judgment touched the earth, heaven reached down to retrieve a man whose heart had walked faithfully with God since his earliest breath. Enoch had watched the world crumble, had seen the giants devour the land, had heard the weeping of mothers, had felt the tremors of the watchers' disgrace. And yet, even as chaos drowned the world in despair, Enoch's spirit remained a steady flame of devotion. Now, As the divine plan approached its climax, heaven summoned him. It began at dawn. Enoch stood on a familiar hill overlooking his valley. Mist curled around his feet, and the sky glowed with the soft amber of morning. He closed his eyes to offer his daily prayer, but before a word could escape his lips, the wind shifted. Not a normal wind, this one held weight, purpose, and a strange warmth that wrapped around him like a cloak. Then came the light. It appeared first as a shimmer at the edge of his vision, then widened into a radiant column stretching from earth to sky. It pulsed gently, as if breathing. Enoch felt neither fear nor confusion. He had sensed this moment approaching his entire life. He opened his eyes and whispered, "I am ready." A voice, neither loud nor soft, but deep enough to shake the bones of the earth, answered, "Come." The world around him dissolved. The grass beneath him melted into light. The sky twisted into spirals of color. Sounds vanished. Gravity faded. And in a single breath, Enoch felt himself lifted his feet, leaning on nothing, his body weightless, his soul expanding like a flame fed by divine wind. He was ascending, the first heaven. The first realm he entered shimmered like a veil of crystal. He floated above vast waters suspended in the sky, swirling with currents that pulsed with hidden life. Angels stood watch over these waters, tall beings robed in white, their faces bright as starlight. One approached him. "Enoch," the angel said, "welcome to the first heaven. Here lie the storehouses of the lower winds, the foundations of the clouds, and the boundaries of the rain." Enoch gazed with wonder. He saw chambers where thunder rested, waiting for God's command. He saw reservoirs of dew that glimmered like liquid diamonds. Everything was ordered, purposeful, harmonious, but this was only the beginning. "Come," the angel said, "there is much more to see. The second heaven." In an instant, Enoch was carried upward. The second heaven was darker, its atmosphere heavy with tension. Lightning flickered in the distance. Chains clattered in the shadows. Here, Enoch saw something that chilled him, a prison for spirits. Angels who had abandoned their posts long before the watchers did were bound here, trapped in darkness until the final judgment. Their forms writhed like silhouettes swallowed by shadow. One of them saw Enoch and reached out with a cry that sounded like metal tearing. "Do not fear," the guiding angel said. "Their chains hold firm. They cannot touch you." But Enoch felt their sorrow reverberate inside him. Even angels could fall. Even angels could suffer. Even angels awaited judgment. He bowed his head in reverence and was lifted to the next realm, the third heaven. Suddenly brilliance. The third heaven burst open like a sunrise. Enoch gasped as he was carried into a vast, radiant garden, a garden so beautiful it made the memory of Eden pale in comparison. Golden trees lined crystal rivers, birds of impossible colors glided through the air, leaving trails of shimmering feathers behind them. Flowers bloomed with soft light, their fragrance like a song made of perfume and harmony. This was the paradise reserved for the righteous. "Here," the angel said, "are the souls of those who walked with God. They await the resurrection, resting in peace until the last days." Enoch saw them, shimmering forms filled with joy, their faces serene. They greeted him warmly, recognizing the holiness upon him, but beyond the garden lay another area, one woven with thorns and shadows. "For not all souls enter paradise," the angel explained. "Some wait in darkness, knowing the weight of their deeds." Enoch trembled, for he felt the ache of judgment in that place. The angel touched his shoulder. "Come, you must see what lies ahead. The fourth heaven." The fourth heaven struck Enoch with awe. It was here that he witnessed the great lights of the sky, not as humans see them, but in their true essence. He saw the sun, a majestic being of fire, guided by chariots of blazing angels who steered its path through the sky. He saw the moon, veiled in silver, moving with quiet dignity. He saw stars arranged like armies, each assigned a course by the Creator. Uriel stood here, the archangel of celestial order. He turned to Enoch and bowed slightly. "Welcome, son of Adam. You walk where no mortal has walked. What you witness will be written for generations, yet unborn." Uriel showed him the gates through which the sun rises and sets. He revealed the chambers where the stars rest when their light dims. He explained the rhythms of seasons, the boundaries of day and night, the harmony holding creation together. "It is all fragile," Uriel said, "and yet perfectly upheld by the word of God." Enoch marveled until the angel lifted him again, the fifth heaven. Here the air crackled with discipline and readiness. Angels stood in formation, legions upon legions, preparing for future battles. Their armor glowed with a cold fire, their swords burned with holy energy, but many of them looked somber. "These," said Enoch's guide, "are the Grigori who did not descend, but mourn their brethren who fell." Enoch approached them. Their sorrow was palpable. They bowed to him, not out of reverence to a man, but out of respect for a story unfolding that they had long awaited. "You will testify against our fallen brothers," one of them said. "We grieve, but we accept the justice of the Almighty." Enoch felt the weight of their hope upon him. Then he rose again, the sixth heaven. This heaven was a realm of pure intellect, where angels wrote the histories of creation on scrolls made of living light. Here were the scribes, the chroniclers, the keepers of divine memory. Tables stretched endlessly, filled with glowing script. Angels dipped quills into wells of radiance, writing prophecies, judgments, blessings, and warnings. One turned to Enoch. "You too will write," the angel said. "What you see will echo until the end of the age." Enoch bowed, understanding his mission more deeply than ever. The seventh heaven. Here the air changed. It grew heavier, holier, deeper. Enoch felt his knees weaken as he entered a realm where even the angels hesitated to tread. Here dwelled the archangels, the guardians of creation. Michael, towering and fierce. Gabriel, radiant and calm. Raphael, wise and gentle. Uriel, sharp as judgment. They surrounded Enoch, each greeting him with a gesture of respect that no mortal had ever received. Michael spoke first. "You have walked faithfully. Because of this, you are invited farther still." Gabriel added, "You will see what even many angels cannot bear to behold." Raphael said, "Fear not, your heart is guarded." And Uriel concluded, "Your testimony will prepare the world for what is to come." They stepped aside. Enoch rose into the eighth heaven, the eighth heaven. Here the light was indescribable, a brilliance that held no shape, yet filled the soul with awe. Angels here sang the harmonies of creation, their voices weaving the patterns of galaxies and the dance of time itself. Enoch heard hymns older than the earth. He felt vibrations of eternity. Every note revealed mysteries too vast for human understanding. He wanted to fall on his face, but invisible hands held him upright. "You are sustained," a voice whispered. "For the vision is not yet complete." He ascended again. The ninth heaven. Silence. A silence so deep it was almost a being itself. The ninth heaven was a realm of stillness, where the foundations of time rested. Here the throne of future judgment awaited activation. Here the scroll of destiny lay sealed. Enoch approached but hesitated. The holiness was overwhelming. His guide spoke. "Only one more realm remains, the 10th heaven." Then came the ascent into the final heaven, the place where the Almighty dwells, the realm beyond all imagination. Light exploded around him. Colors not known on earth swirled like galaxies being born. A warmth so perfect it moved him to tears wrapped around his soul. And then he saw it, the great throne, high, majestic, engulfed in radiant fire brighter than 1,000 suns, yet gentle enough to cradle the frail heart of a mortal visitor. The Ancient of Days sat upon it. His robe shone like falling snow, his face burned like living fire. Rivers of glory flowed from beneath the throne. Hosts of angels bowed in endless waves. Enoch fell on his face, trembling, but the Almighty spoke, "Rise, Enoch, for you are my scribe." Strength entered him, terror melted into awe. He lifted his head. "You have seen the heavens," God said. "You have witnessed the order of creation. Now you shall write what you have seen, that generations may know my justice, my mercy, and the destiny that awaits the world." Enoch's heart blazed. "Lord," he whispered, "I am yours." And so the visions began, visions of the Watcher's judgment, of the giant's end, of the coming flood, of the future Messiah, of the resurrection, of the final renewal of creation. Heaven poured its secrets into him. When it was finished, the Almighty said, "You will return to the earth for a time, that you may write, but when your writing is complete, you will not taste death. You will walk with me forever." Enoch bowed low. The heavens faded, the earth returned beneath his feet, but he was no longer the same man. He carried the light of 10 heavens inside him. The world was about to change, and Enoch would leave behind the record that guided generations through darkness. After witnessing the heights of heaven, Enoch was shown something even more mysterious. Someone, a figure wrapped in light, ancient yet unborn, gentle yet terrifying in glory. In this chapter, heaven unveils the identity of the one who would walk the earth, suffer, rise, and return in power. This is the moment Enoch saw the Son of Man, the hidden king whose coming would shape the destiny of every nation and every soul. When Enoch returned from the 10th heaven, he carried something within him that no mortal had ever held, the weight of divine revelation. His eyes had seen the throne of the Almighty. His ears had heard the harmonies of creation. His spirit had walked through realms untouched by human imagination. But heaven had not finished speaking. There was one more vision, one that would become the heartbeat of prophecy for ages to come. It happened on a night heavy with silence. Enoch sat alone on the hillside outside his dwelling. The stars shimmered above him, bright and sharp as if freshly hung. The air was still, even the insects seemed to hold their breath. Enoch closed his eyes, letting the memory of the heavens settle inside him. But then the wind shifted gently at first, then with purpose. Like invisible hands parting the air, a light appeared in front of him. Not the fierce fire of Michael, nor the cool radiance of Uriel. This light was different, soft yet overwhelming, warm yet powerful, familiar yet mysterious. It pulsed like a heartbeat, growing brighter with each breath Enoch took. Then the voice spoke, "Enoch, rise." He did, though his legs trembled beneath him. The light stretched upward, widening, shaping itself into a form tall, slender, radiant, and as the glow softened, Enoch saw a face. It was human, and yet it was not. It was a face older than the mountains, yet youthful as dawn, eyes that carried the memory of eternity, a presence that made Enoch feel both comforted and undone. Enoch fell to his knees, overwhelmed. "Do not fear," the figure said. Enoch's voice barely escaped his throat. "My lord, who are you?" The figure stepped closer. Light rippled around him like a cloak woven from morning. "I am the one whom many names have attempted to describe," he said. "The one hidden until the fullness of time, the one chosen before creation, the one whom you will know as the Son of Man." The words struck Enoch with a depth he could not explain. The Son of Man. He had heard the term whispered among angels, spoken in reverence, hinted at in the chambers of heaven, but he had never understood who or what it meant. Now he saw him, The Son of Man raised his hand, and suddenly the world dissolved again. Enoch felt himself lifted, carried not through the heavens this time, but through something deeper, the unfolding tapestry of history itself. He saw visions forming around him like living paintings. He saw a young woman in a humble dwelling, her heart pure and devoted. He saw an angel visit her, telling her she would bear a child who was both human and divine. He saw her cradle the infant, her eyes shining with wonder. "That is me," the Son of Man said softly. Enoch watched the child grow into a man gentle in spirit, fierce in righteousness, healing the sick, comforting the broken, challenging the proud. He taught with authority that shook nations. Crowds followed him, enemies feared him. Enoch whispered, "He is love made flesh." But then the vision darkened. Enoch saw betrayal, suffering, nails driven into hands, a cross raised against the sky. The Son of Man hanging between heaven and earth, bleeding for a world that did not yet understand the price of sin. Enoch cried out, "Why must this happen?" The Son of Man answered, "Because justice and mercy meet here, because death must be defeated by entering it, because the world must be redeemed." The vision shifted again. Enoch saw the stone rolled away. He saw the Son of Man rise not in stealth, but in triumph, radiant as the morning after a long night. Angels rejoiced, darkness retreated, hope blossomed like spring after 1,000 winters. Then the vision carried him farther still. He saw the Son of Man ascending to heaven, welcomed by choirs of angels. He saw him seated at the right hand of the Almighty. He saw him crowned with glory and authority over all nations. And then he saw the future. The Son of Man returned, not as a suffering servant, but as a conquering king. His voice roared like rushing waters. His eyes shone with judgment. The earth trembled, the wicked fled, the righteous rose, the heavens opened like a scroll. Enoch shivered. This was the final destiny of creation. This was the moment history bent toward. The Son of Man looked at Enoch, reading his thoughts. "You see the fullness of my role," he said, "Redeemer, Judge, Shepherd, King. Why show me this?" Enoch whispered, "Because your writings will prepare the world, because generations will need hope, because even when the flood comes, even when judgment falls, humanity must know that salvation is planned from the beginning." Enoch bowed deeply. "My Lord, I do not deserve to see this. No one deserves it," the Son of Man replied. "Yet it is given." The vision shifted once more. This time Enoch saw heaven itself respond to the Son of Man. Countless angels bowed. Endless thrones surrounded the central throne of the Almighty. Books were opened, books of life, books of judgment, books of remembrance. A river of fire flowed beneath the throne. Mountains melted like wax before him. And the Son of Man stood at the center of it all. He spoke a single word. The universe obeyed. Enoch felt as though his soul were unraveling under the weight of glory. Yet the Son of Man reached out and touched his shoulder. Strength filled him again. "You are my witness," he said. "Write what you have seen. Record these visions. Tell the story of the one who is, who was, and who will come again." Enoch nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I will obey." The Son of Man smiled not with distant divinity, but with warmth that reached Enoch's heart. "Your obedience will echo across ages. Even when your writings are hidden, they will resurface. They will speak. They will warn. They will comfort. They will point the world toward me." Enoch felt the truth of those words resonate through the fabric of time. The visions faded. The sky reappeared. The hillside returned beneath Enoch's feet. But he was not alone. The Son of Man stood there for a moment more, his presence radiant against the night sky. Then, as gently as a candle flickering in a breeze, he dissolved into light, rising, ascending, blending into the heavens. Enoch collapsed to his knees. He was shaking not from fear, but from awe. He had seen the Redeemer before the Redeemer's birth. He had witnessed the resurrection before the resurrection occurred. He had beheld the final judgment before the world even understood sin, and he knew his task was not yet complete. He returned to his dwelling, took up the tools God had commanded him to use, and began writing the visions that would guide generations. Each stroke of ink carried the weight of eternity. Each word was shaped by glory. Each page held the mystery of the Son of Man. Enoch understood that the world was moving toward a flood, that the watchers were bound, that giants would soon perish. But beyond all that destruction, he saw hope, a hope rooted not in humanity's strength, but in the one who would come. He saw the story beyond the flood, beyond judgment, beyond time. Enoch wrote until dawn, and when the first light touched the horizon, he looked up and whispered, "The King is coming." After witnessing the Son of Man, Enoch was shown the blueprint of creation itself. Time unfolded before him, not as a river flowing forward, but as a vast tapestry woven with purpose, order, and prophecy. In this chapter, Enoch learns the celestial calendar, the rhythms that govern sun, moon, and stars, and the 10 weeks prophecy that reveals the rise, fall, and restoration of the world. This is the moment heaven teaches him how history truly works. Enoch had seen glory beyond imagination, the 10 heavens, the prisons of fallen angels, the garden of the righteous, the throne of the Almighty, and the radiant presence of the Son of Man. But heaven was not finished with him. There remained one final revelation, one that would give meaning to everything he had witnessed. Heaven was about to show him time, not time as humans experience it, rushing, unpredictable, slipping through fingers, but time as heaven sees it, precise, ordered, and governed by divine wisdom. It began on a quiet morning. Enoch sat beside a small fire outside his dwelling, writing the visions he had received. His mind pulsed with the weight of revelation. His hand trembled every time he tried to capture the majesty of what he had seen. He paused to rest, closing his eyes, and then a shadow fell upon him. He opened his eyes. Uriel stood before him. The archangel's presence seemed carved from light. His expression held both sternness and compassion. His voice carried the clarity of a bell ringing across mountains. "Enoch," he said, "you have seen the heavens, you have witnessed the Son of Man, but now you must understand the structure that binds creation together." Enoch bowed. "I am ready, my lord." Uriel extended his hand. "Then rise. We ascend once more." The world dissolved, and Enoch felt his body lifted through realms of light. Soon they stood upon a platform that seemed woven from starlight, a place suspended between heaven and the physical universe, a vantage point where both celestial order and earthly time were visible at once. Uriel spoke. "This is the realm where the cycles of creation are decreed." Below them, Enoch saw the sun moving across the sky, not as a glowing orb, but as a radiant being, guided by chariots of flame. He saw the moon following its own ordered path, shimmering with cold beauty. He saw the stars marching in patterns too precise for human imagination, each assigned a course and purpose. "This," Uriel continued, "is the heavenly calendar, the rhythm of the sun." Uriel gestured, and the sun's path expanded before them like a scroll unfurled. "Behold the gates of the east, through which the sun rises," Uriel said. "There are 6 gates for its ascent and 6 gates for its descent. Each gate marks a season. Each season marks a change in the earth." Enoch watched as the sun emerged through one gate, then another. With each transition, the world below shifted. Green fields sprouted, snow melted, heat thickened the air, leaves turned gold, winds grew cold, Rains returned. "It is not chance," Uriel said. "It is design. The sun is faithful to its circuit because the Creator ordained it." Enoch's heart swelled with wonder. "Teach me," he said. "I must write this." "You will." Uriel promised. The mystery of the moon next. The moon appeared resplendent, serene. "The moon," Uriel said, "governs the months. It waxes and wanes in perfect harmony. Its light is a reflection of the sun's glory, given to mark celebrations, observances, and spiritual seasons. The phases displayed themselves like a slow dance: new, crescent, half, full, waning, returning to new. Enoch realized that the moon was not merely a night lamp, it was a divine messenger written across the sky. "Humanity will forget this order," Uriel said with sorrow, "but you will preserve it, the path of the stars." Uriel lifted Enoch's gaze even higher. Thousands of stars shimmered in formation, not random, not scattered, but organized like armies. Constellations aligned like symbols carved into the heavens. Some shone brighter on certain nights, others dimmer, all part of a celestial choreography. "These," Uriel said, "are the watchers of the night, not the fallen ones, but true guardians. They light the darkness so humanity will never be wholly lost." Enoch nodded, tears in his eyes. "It is more beautiful than my words can ever express." Uriel smiled gently. "Your purpose is not to capture its beauty, but to record its design." The 364-day year, Enoch suddenly saw a great wheel turning vast as the sky, divided into layers of light. "This," Uriel announced, "is the year as ordained by the Creator, 364 days, perfect and whole." Enoch studied the wheel. "There are 4 seasons," Uriel explained, "each marked by an intercalary day, a sacred day that completes the cycle. These days are pillars of the year." Enoch felt divine logic weaving through the vision. "It is perfect," he whispered. "Yes," Uriel said, "but humanity will tamper with it. They will create systems that drift, calendars that confuse, patterns that break. But you will preserve the original design." Enoch bowed his head, humbled by the responsibility. "The map of time." Uriel's expression grew solemn. "Now," he said, "you must see the ages." A vast tapestry appeared before them, a panorama stretching from the first breath of Adam to the last day of the world. It was divided into 10 great sections, each representing an age of humanity. "These," Uriel declared, "are the 10 weeks of time." The first week, Enoch saw Adam and Eve walking in innocence. Then, leaving Eden in sorrow, he saw humanity learning to till the soil, raise families, build simple communities. "This week," Uriel said, "is the birth of mankind." The second week, he saw corruption creeping in, Cain slaying Abel, tribes forming, violence spreading. "This," Uriel said, "is the rise of wickedness." The third week, he saw Enoch himself, walking with God, receiving revelation, becoming a beacon in an age darkening with sin. "This is your week," Uriel said, "the week of instruction." Enoch felt a strange mix of humility and awe. The fourth week, he saw Noah righteous yet mocked, building the ark against all reason. He saw the coming flood, waters rising, mountains disappearing beneath waves. "This is the week of cleansing," Uriel said. The fifth week, he saw nations forming after the flood, languages dividing at a great tower rising into the sky. "This is the week of separation." The sixth week, he saw Abraham called from his land. He saw covenants made. He saw a family become a nation. "This is the week of promise," Uriel said. The seventh week, he saw Israel flourish, fall, rise again, fall again, kings ruling, prophets speaking, wars raging. "This is the week of turmoil," The 8th week, he saw the arrival of the One. He had met the Son of Man, walking the earth, healing, teaching, dying, rising, ascending. This is the week of salvation. Enoch's heart burned with reverence. The 9th week, he saw the spread of the message across distant lands. He saw believers rise under persecution. He saw kingdoms crumble and nations form anew. This is the week of testimony, Uriel said. The 10th week. Finally he saw the end, the great judgment, thrones set, books opened, the Son of Man shining brighter than 1,000 suns, the righteous rewarded, the wicked silenced, creation renewed. This, Uriel said softly, is the final week, the week of restoration. The tapestry folded itself into a scroll and vanished. Uriel turned to Enoch. You have seen what few have ever been shown, he said. Time is not chaos, it is design. History is not wandering, it is marching toward the throne of the Son of Man. Enoch felt the weight of destiny settle around him. What must I do? He asked. Write, Uriel replied. Record the calendar, the ages, the visions. Humanity will lose its way, but your words will guide the remnant. Enoch bowed deeply. I will write everything. Uriel placed a hand on Enoch's shoulder. Light poured from the touch. Wisdom, clarity, strength. Your mission nears its end, the archangel said. Soon, the Almighty will bring you home. But before that, your writings must be completed. The world around them shimmered, the celestial platform dissolved. The sky of earth returned above Enoch's head. He stood once more on the hillside, outside his dwelling, scroll in hand. Heart burning with revelation, he looked up at the sun, the moon, the stars, and saw not light and darkness, but purpose and prophecy. He understood that creation itself was a divine clock, and history a divine story, and he knew his writings would carry the map of time into future ages. Enoch sat down, lifted his stylus, and began the work that would echo through millennia. The giants had fallen, the watchers were bound, and the flood approached like a shadow across the world. But the end of their bodies did not mean the end of their influence. The spirits of the Nephilim, born of heaven and earth, would become a new terror. And as the world prepared for destruction, one man completed his mission. This chapter reveals the birth of the first demons and the moment when Enoch stepped beyond mortality, taken into heaven without tasting death. The world stood on the edge of judgment. The giants had torn themselves apart under Gabriel's influence, their war shaking mountains and splitting valleys. Their bodies lay scattered across the land, massive forms rotting beneath the sun, returning to the dust from which their human mothers had been formed. Though their heavenly essence resisted decay, the earth drank their blood. Birds circled them warily, unwilling to feast on beings born of rebellion. But their deaths did not bring peace, for the Nephilim were not merely flesh. They were hybrids, creatures forged from mortal bodies, and the celestial essence of the Watchers. Their souls could not return to the realm of angels, for they had not been born in holiness, nor could they enter the realm of humans, for they were not wholly human. When their bodies collapsed, something new emerged. The first demon inhaled its first breath. A dark wind blew across the land, carrying whispers that had no source. Shadows deepened where no sunlight should have been blocked. The air pulsed with unseen malice. Spirits rose from the corpses of the giants, spirits hungry, restless, and filled with the rage that marked their violent lives. These spirits did not ascend, they did not descend, they lingered, and the world trembled, the birth of the demonic. Enoch was writing when he first felt the shift. A chill swept through his bones, not caused by weather, but by something far deeper, something spiritual. The hairs on his arms rose, and his heart stirred with unease. He stepped outside his dwelling. The sky was clear, but the air felt thick, as though an invisible storm hovered just beyond sight. The ground seemed to hum. A shape flickered at the edge of his vision, then vanished. Enoch whispered to himself, "The spirits of the giants have awakened." Uriel appeared beside him, silent as a falling leaf. His face bore a sorrowful gravity. "You feel it," Enoch said. "Yes," Uriel replied. "The giants' bodies are dead, but their spirits cannot rest. They are not welcome in heaven, nor are they destined for the realm of the righteous dead. They are trapped between worlds. What will they do?" Enoch asked. "What they did in life," Uriel answered. "Devour, corrupt, wander. They will seek bodies to inhabit, minds to torment, hearts to influence. They will whisper violence into the ears of men. They will become the unclean spirits that trouble humanity until the final judgment." Enoch shuddered. "Can they be destroyed?" "No," Uriel said softly. "Not until the appointed day. Their nature is incomplete. They are spirits without purpose, beings born of rebellion, existing in defiance of creation's order." Enoch closed his eyes. "Will they torment the righteous?" "Some will try," Uriel replied. "But the faithful are shielded. The danger is for those already inclined toward darkness." A distant howl echoed across the hills, not the cry of a wolf, not the roar of a giant, but something between a scream and a whisper, a voice without lungs, a hunger without a body. Uriel looked toward the sound. They are restless. They know their time is short. Enoch's heart grew heavy. The world was already drowning in corruption. Now invisible enemies would roam it as well. But Uriel placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Do not fear. The flood will cleanse the world soon, Noah and the final preparation." Meanwhile, in a valley miles away, Noah worked tirelessly on the ark. His hands ached, his back throbbed, yet he labored with the determination of a man who knew the fate of the world, rested on his obedience. Enoch visited him often, not physically always. For Enoch traveled through realms unseen, but his presence lingered like a blessing over Noah's camp. One evening, as Noah and his sons sealed the final beams, Enoch appeared at the edge of the firelight. His form shimmered slightly, as though not entirely of earth anymore. "Noah," Enoch said, "your time is near." Noah turned, sweat streaked across his brow. "Is the world truly beyond saving?" Enoch nodded solemnly. "The corruption is complete. The hearts of men crave violence, the giant spirits roam, the watchers abound. But their influence still poisons the earth. The flood is mercy, as much as it is judgment." Noah lowered his head. "I will do as the Almighty commands." "You have done well," Enoch replied. "Your obedience will preserve the line of humanity." Noah's eyes shone with gratitude and fear. "Will we survive the spirits?" "Yes," Enoch said. "The ark is not only wood, it is sealed by divine protection. No unclean thing may enter." With those words, Enoch faded into the night, leaving Noah strengthened, the weight of completion. Enoch returned to his dwelling and continued writing. His hands moved with supernatural endurance, ink flowing across the scroll like living light. He wrote the visions, the heavenly calendar, the judgment of the watchers, the prophecy of the Son of Man, the history of the world in its 10 great ages. He wrote until the sun rose. He wrote until his fingers cramped. He wrote until every vision had been faithfully captured. When he placed the final mark upon the scroll, a strange stillness settled over the room. A whisper brushed his ear. "It is finished." He turned, and Michael stood there. The archangel's presence filled the room with a solemn, radiant gravity. His eyes glowed with both triumph and tenderness. "Enoch," Michael said, "your work is complete." Enoch bowed deeply. "I have written what I saw." "What now, my lord?" Michael extended his hand. "Now you come with us." Enoch's heart pounded, not with fear but with awe. "Is my time on earth over?" "Yes," Michael replied. "You will not see death. You will not taste the sorrow of the grave. The Almighty brings you home." Enoch looked around his dwelling one last time, the place where he had lived, prayed, written, raised his family, wept for the world. It felt strange to leave it, yet he felt no grief. Instead, peace spread through him like warm fire. He stepped outside, the ascension of Enoch. The sky was clear. The morning sun stretched across the horizon. Birds chirped in the trees. The world gave no sign that this day would be different from any other, and yet every blade of grass seemed to shimmer with anticipation. Enoch walked to the hill where he had first heard the voice of God so many years ago. He felt the earth beneath his feet, cool and familiar. He breathed in the scent of dew-covered leaves. Then he sensed the heavens opening. Light broke across the sky, not like sunrise, but like the curtain between worlds being drawn back. Radiance poured through the opening. Angels descended, hundreds of them, their wings glowing, their faces shining with joy. Uriel approached, smiling. "Welcome, friend." Raphael bowed respectfully. "You have completed your task." Gabriel nodded, his expression gentle. "Your words will echo across ages." Finally, Michael stepped forward. "Are you ready?" Enoch lifted his face toward the light. Yes. A warm wind rose from the heavens. His feet lifted off the ground. His body felt weightless. He did not fall upward. He ascended, drawn by love, drawn by purpose, drawn by the one he had walked with for centuries. His people searched for him. They found no body. They found no grave. They found only silence. And the scrolls he left behind, the legacy of Enoch. Noah collected Enoch's writings, storing them safely in the ark before the first drops of rain began to fall. Those scrolls would become treasured among his descendants, passed through generations, hidden and recovered across ages. They would whisper of angels and giants, of lost heavens and coming redemption, of calendars written in the stars and prophecies stretching to the world's end. But most importantly, they would remind humanity that one man had walked with God, and God had taken him. The spirits continue. As Enoch rose into the heavens, the spirits of the giants wailed across the earth. They sensed the coming flood. They knew the cleansing would strip them of the bodies they once influenced. But they also knew they would remain, drifting, haunting, tempting, corrupting, until the final judgment. Their first era had ended. Their second would begin after the flood waters receded. But the world would not face them alone. Enoch's words would anchor future generations. The Son of Man, whom Enoch had seen, would one day conquer the darkness completely. Enoch's final moment. As he entered the realm of light, Enoch felt no fear, only fulfillment, only peace. He saw the throne again. He heard the songs of angels. He felt the presence of the Almighty. A voice spoke, not thunderous but intimate. "Well done, my faithful servant. Enter my rest." And Enoch became the first among mortals to step into eternity without tasting death. His journey was complete. His legacy had begun. The world would drown. Humanity would start anew. The Son of Man would one day rise, and the spirits of the giants would roam until their final defeat. But Enoch, the scribe, the prophet, the friend of God, walked into eternity, bearing witness to it all.